to the third amendment to the annexation agreement pertaining to the 83 plus or minus acre trails on Sunset Lake Subdivision, which is at the northeast corner of Airport Road and Fort Jesse Road. Please call the roll.
Mayor Coos,
Here.
Miss Lorenz,
Here.
Mr. Nord,
Here.
Miss Smith,
Here.
Miss Harris,
Here.
Mr. Preston, Mr. McCarthy.
Here.
Is there any, excuse me, is there anyone here wishing to speak pertaining to the third amendment of the annexation agreement for trails on Sunset Lake Subdivision? Is there anyone here wishing to speak pertaining to the third amendment to the annexation agreement at trails on Sunset Lake Subdivision? And third and final time, is there anyone here wishing to speak pertaining to the third amendment to the annexation agreement pertaining to trails on Sunset Lake Subdivision? Motion for adjournment, please.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Miss Lorenz, Mr. Nord,
Aye.
Miss Smith,
Aye.
Miss Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Preston, Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Mayor Coos.
Aye, we're adjourned, and we will start the regular meeting in about 2 minutes.
And I don't know.
August 15th, 2022. Please call the roll.
Mayor Coos,
Here.
Miss Lorenz,
Here.
Mr. Nord,
Here.
Miss Smith,
Here.
Miss Harris,
Here.
Mr. Preston, Mr. McCarthy.
Here.
We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We may or may not have public comment. Is there Dwayne Sampson, I think it is, or Corey Hoffman in the audience tonight? All right. We will move on to the omnibus agenda. Items that are considered routine and will be taken with one vote unless a council member would like to pull an item for discussion. Looking, Ms. Smith?
Item D as in dog.
Bernard,
I'd like to pull item F as in Frank.
motion for approval.
Second.
Items considered under omnibus are approval of the minutes of the regular council meeting of August 1st, 2022, report to receive and file town of normal expenditures for payment as of August 10th, 2022, a resolution waiving the formal bidding process and accepting a quote authorizing the purchase of a one-ton pickup truck from Run Chevrolet in the amount of $63,269. A resolution to accept bids and award a contract to Row Construction, a division of United Contractors Midwest, for the East Rab Road to Hershey to North Point project in the amount of $313,260.65. Please call the roll.
Miss Lorenz,
Aye.
Mr. Nord,
Aye.
Miss Smith,
Aye.
Miss Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Preston, Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. Those items are approved. Item D is a resolution to accept bids and award a contract to McLean County Asphalt Company Incorporated for tennis and pickleball court improvements at Anderson and Underwood Parks in the amount of $560,788.27 and an associated budget adjustment. Ms. Smith.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Smith?
I had sent an email to the city manager to inquire about this because although the information was there, it was a little hard to follow. And I was wondering if, for the record, she wouldn't mind to explain what happened with the budget shift from the one project that isn't being pursued and what the future plans are for that court.
Sure. I'll try to explain. It's a little bit different than what we had been planning in terms of our budget. But this year we budgeted for improvements to Maxwell, Anderson, and Ironwood Court. Or excuse me, I'm already wrong. Ironwood, Anderson, and Underwood courts. And we thought by packaging all three court improvement projects that we would be best positioned for good pricing. And we went out for bid, and when the bids came back, we had two bidders, McLean County Asphalt and Byrne & Jones Construction. And we are asking council to approve the bid and authorize the work to McLean County Asphalt, but it would only be for Anderson courts, tennis courts, and Underwood tennis courts, converting those to pickleball courts. We do not have enough funds budgeted to do all three projects. So what we're asking council to do is authorize us to move forward with, again, just Anderson court improvement, not lighting, but just the court improvement, Underwood court improvement. And in order to do that, we are going to have to use $70,790 from the Ironwood budget to get those two courts done. And then what we will do in the meantime, if council authorizes us to move forward, we will then reevaluate how to plan for and budget for Ironwood. It does need attention. It is a very popular court, and we know that we'll have to reassess how best to get that court improvement done. And so we will move forward with planning for that and then come back to council with an appropriate budget and project scope for Ironwood.
Are there any maintenance items that can be done now to sustain Ironwood until we're able to do the intended upgrade?
Well, I can tell you that we could do perhaps a little bit of patching, but we thought Ironwood needed attention and would not necessarily make it through the winter without too much attention. So it's playable right now. We can maybe do some temporary repairs. We'll evaluate that and come back and let council know. We also told individuals who we talk to regularly, who are pickleball aficionados, we'll keep them in the loop on what the plan is. We think that ultimately Ironwood may need more improvements than what we had originally anticipated due to some drainage issues under the court and the like. So we'll have to give that some more attention. And in the meantime, we'll figure out what we can do as possibly a temporary fix.
And the lighting that is also pushed to a future date, it's working now? It's just your plans are to upgrade it?
I believe Anderson is working. I'm actually going to ask Mr. Trummel if he can give me a nod. I think Ironwood lights are working, yes, but we did want to make improvements to I keep saying the wrong part. Anderson lights are currently working. We do plan to make improvements in the lighting, and so we will again have to rebudget for that as well.
Okay. That's, and these facilities are available to the public just with reservations. There's no cost to use, correct?
That is correct. You
Okay.
can, I think you can drop in and reserve, like for pickleball, but usually tennis is walk on, first court, first come, first serve.
Further on this item? Mr. Nord?
Ms. Lorenz had her hand up first.
Either one, doesn't matter.
Whoever.
Okay, thanks. Well, I am a pickleballer, and so I will say that they do need some addressing of the cracks. So my question would be, with this kind of pivot to a Plan B, what's the time frame for that? Is that going to be yet this construction season or likely next year?
We will take a look at it. We actually believe that we'll bring in an engineer to take a look at a more detailed review of Ironwood.
Okay.
So no significant improvements will occur this construction season.
Okay. I'll let the pickleballers know.
And we have as well. We've already let them know what the plan is and that we would keep them in the loop. So
Cool. Thank you.
hearing it from you as well would be helpful.
Mr. Nord?
Thank you. We had just a couple meetings ago pushed off repairing Beach because the costs were too high, and that's a road that I'm sure far more people travel on than play pickleball and tennis. That was over budget some, and now with this amenity, this is over what was estimated. And yet we're spending the money to go forward. So to me, this seems like we're putting a higher priority on amenities, and if the amenity costs more, we'll still spend the money. We're doing it with the underpass as well. So I'm not in favor of increasing the spending on this amenity when we can't afford to take care of the necessary infrastructure that far more people travel on. So that's where I'm at on this. I understand pickleball is a growing sport, but it just comes down to priorities and where the money's going to be spent.
Mr. Nord, I don't have my notes with me. Can you refresh to me what the bids are on the, what the bids were and the overage on the underpass?
Well, sure.
The bids.
Public was told.
The bids, Mr.
The
Nord.
bids?
The bids.
We don't have bids.
Thank you.
We've got
Thank you.
estimates. That's what we have here in front of us this was estimated to cost less, and then the numbers came in and it's costing more, which is the same spot that Beach Street was. It's just there's no increases too high to push off an amenity, but increases for infrastructure, necessary things, those we can push off, and that's why I'm against this. If we can't afford to take care of the things we have to have, then we shouldn't be spending money on stuff that we don't need to have.
Ms. Smith?
If I may clarify, according to the packet information, what was budgeted was Parks and Rec's spending for these courts. So it was part of the budget. We are staying within the budget for recreation by using these funds. Government accounting is set up for dedicated funds for specific purposes. At our budget meeting, when everything was presented, this allocation to Parks and Rec was approved as part of the total budget. And so to move it to paving is not an appropriate alternative. Instead, the staff is presenting to us a recommendation that we need to stay within the allocation for these upgrades and turn down the additional work that would cause us to exceed the budget. So in my estimation, this is not redirecting funds from a necessary expenditure to what is perceived by some as a frivolous expenditure, but instead following through on the original budget direction that Parks and Rec would receive funding, and we've had to scale back and work on only 2 park sets of courts. And I just wanted to highlight that as opposed to saying that we're misdirecting funds. Thank you.
Further on this item? Mr. Nord.
I just want to be clear, I did not say misdirecting funds. So I didn't say misdirecting, misappropriating, or anything like that. This simply is priorities. We had budgeted, which the budget I didn't support, not everybody at the council did, and we were told when we passed that big budget that we could always talk about the small things as they come forward. That's what I'm doing now. Originally, it was for 3 projects. We were only doing 2.
Mr. McCarthy.
See if I can get this to work without breaking your drums. Maybe not. Just a little bit of an extension of my colleague Ms. Smith's comments is when I read this, the packet, and interpreted this is there was a budget amount for working on the Parks and Rec pickleball court facilities, and bids came in what they did. Costs are what they are. Staff cut back because there was only a set amount of money scheduled for the project. So for me, this is fiscal responsibility. This is, hey, we don't have enough money to do all 3. We're going to cut back 2 because that was what the budget amount was. So I don't know how else you look at it any other way. We're living within our means to get some progress done in this part of the thing. And also, I disagree philosophically with the we don't do anything else until my priority. I don't agree with that. There's lots of operations in the town that happen simultaneously and require funding simultaneously. Parks and Recs, some people's amenities. It's why some people locate here and think we're a great community. We have great amenities, and believe that it's a great place to live because of that. I happen to be one of those folks as well. But yeah, so from my vantage point, this is good budget management, and I'm happy to see that staff took the step. Thank you.
Oops, sorry. Oh, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to explain, certainly understand and appreciate all of council's, thoughts and evaluation of the various projects that we bid. I did want to clarify for some people's understanding, the project that Mr. Nord is referencing was on the July 18th agenda. We had 1 bidder for a street improvement project on Beach Street. Their bid came in at $550,000. We budgeted $389,000, almost $390,000. So it was $160,000 over budget with just 1 bidder. So we asked council to reject and allow us to rebid this winter. So it's not a project that will never get done. It's a project that we thought if we rebid it this winter, we'll get better pricing. So I just wanted to explain.
Fair enough. Further on this item? Please call the roll.
Mr. Nord.
No.
Ms. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Harris.
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy.
Aye.
Ms. Lorenz.
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. That resolution is approved. Item F is a resolution authorizing the city manager to solicit bids through the town's energy broker for electricity for town-owned accounts and execute an energy service agreement with the lowest possible bidder. Responsible bidder, excuse me. Motion, Mr. Nord.
I so move.
Second.
Mr. Nord?
Thank you. So we voted on an aggregation for, I guess, the energy aggregation for residents. Their tax bills would default to a different provider. I'm curious, what is the criteria, or how is the criteria different from what we recommended residents to use versus who the town is going to use?
Sure, I'll start and then I'll punt to Mr. Hanson, who's the expert, but I will indicate that not for tax bill. I believe you indicated their residents' tax bill. It's
For the
actually
power.
residents' electric utility bill. We do offer electric aggregation program, and we participate in that program. It is available to certain residents actually who have Ameren service. It's not available to Corn Belt customers, and it is available for residential. It does not apply to municipal. And so this particular action tonight is on the agenda so we can go out and get bids for municipal electric service. And I will ask Mr. Hanson to jump in and supplement.
Sure. Thank you. So specifically, the program that we undertook in the spring is Ms. Reese said, specifically for residential customers and small businesses only. The agreement that's before you is utilizing the same service. We are part of a consortium in Central Illinois that uses the Stone River Group that goes out and solicits bids on behalf of a number of municipalities and small businesses. I think they have some 60,000 accounts that they bid for. That was a 2-year agreement and that we were getting set to expire in June of this year. They went out for bid on behalf of the group and successfully received a rate from Constellation that actually was a 3-year agreement. Obviously, an increase from what we had before because of the pandemic, but has turned out to be quite beneficial to our residents. It's some 30+%, I believe, because they're in the back. Almost 40% reduction from what the current Ameren rate is. So the program is working as it's supposed to. The residents were converted that were part of that program July 1st. What's on the table for tonight, and I'll defer to Mr. Clinch, but this is actually for town-only electricity as a major commercial user. That doesn't fall within the parameters of the aggregation. Our hope is that rates for the town will also be favorable when we go out for them. There's a lot of volatility in the energy market, so I'll defer to Mr. Clinch and to our consultants, but that's what we're doing tonight, and that's different. But I can tell you the electric aggregation program from the resident standpoint is working very well. Our rate is very favorable compared to the market, at least at the moment.
So criteria was my question.
Criteria.
Is the criteria just cost? Does it have to be a green supplier? I mean, what's the criteria that we're
For tonight's action?
Yes.
That's actually part of, I'll have to defer to Mr. Clinch because he's, facilities puts out the agreement. I only handle the aggregation because I think the first part of your question was how is this related to what we did in the spring? They're not related at all. The action in the spring is specifically for aggregating power on behalf of residents and small businesses. This tonight is specifically to purchase power for town facilities.
Okay, so then I'll summarize this up real quick as to why I'm getting at this. Whenever it comes back, I would like to see that this was the low-cost bidder and that we decided to go with a higher supplier because there's some other criteria, like we wanted all solar or we wanted all some other criteria because, you know, we're looking at the fiscal impact. So that's why I'm asking what the criteria is. And I understand that the vendor's going to be looking. So if you could just relay that onto the vendor too. That the fiscal impact is really where my mind's at. Thank you.
Further on the item? Please call the roll.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Preston? Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Ms. Lorenz,
Aye.
Mr. Nord,
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. That item is approved. We move to general orders. First item is a resolution authorizing the execution of a modified grant agreement with the United States Department of Transportation under the fiscal year 2019 Build Transportation Grants Program, and that's for the Underpass project at Uptown Station.
Move approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Discussion on this item? Mr. Nord?
So are we approving, like, signing a grant to be sent off? Is that what we're approving? Or are we approving accepting funds or approving adjusting a budget? What exactly are we approving?
We're not officially asking council to modify the budget, but we are asking council to authorize us to execute the grant agreement with the Federal Rail Administration, which means we will be accepting an additional $3.16 million, $3.157 million from Federal Rail Administration, their 2019 build grant.
Okay. Then the justification that we used for this additional money, was it an increase in cost for the project from the original $24 million?
It was a budget that we put together with some very conservative assumptions so that we could be confident in moving forward and hoping that the Federal Rail Administration would be in a position to award us additional dollars. So the request we made of them a couple months ago was for an additional $6 million. I think I've shared that with council on a couple of occasions. The Federal Rail Administration did award us more funds, which is pretty amazing. We started out with 13 million from them, and so we're now be up over 16 million. So we asked for 6 million. They've awarded us 3.157 million, and we're thrilled with that. And we will make that our budget as we move forward because we think we're in really good shape.
So just at our last council meeting, we had a similar conversation about the budget because there was a number, well, because the number was given to the feds that it was $6 million increase. But then at that last council meeting, we were told that no, the budget hadn't gone up. So now it seems like we're just asking the government, we're just doing this numbers game, giving a story to the government saying, hey, it's going to cost more. Can we get more money? You know, without actually telling our local taxpayers that, yes, we do expect it to cost more money. If we were to do that, or if anybody were to do that to the federal government on their own, you know, for some benefit, you know, that's a fraud. But now we're just telling a story and trying to get more money, and then we adjust our budget if we get that money. You know, so I think that there needs to be some truth, and the same story is told to each governing body. And it just seems like it's not, because we had $24 million, then $30 million is what was sent out in April. And then just 2 weeks ago, we were back down to the $24 million. Now we're at $27 million because this is basically how much money the federal government has said that they're going to give us. You know, it just seems like there's too many truths. If we're going to adjust the budget, we should vote as a council, adjust the budget, and give everybody the same story. And that's my hang up.
Okay, well, my story has never changed, Mr. Nord, and every partner that we have on this project is very aware of where we're at with design, budget, funding. And so you're absolutely accurate. 2 weeks ago, I believe, we came to council with the great news that the Illinois Department of Transportation was able to provide us more funding. So that was wonderful. And then shortly thereafter, we received notification from the Rail Administration that we qualified for more 2019 build grant funds. So the fact that US DOT and IDOT have both agreed to fund additional to make additional allocations towards this project is fabulous. And I think in the past you've asked me on occasion, what is the town's budget? And I've shared with you where it is. I've shared with many people where it is in the adopted budget, where they can find the project. Council has not formally modified our budget. For planning purposes, though, we have been consistent, and we've explained why we've asked for more funds, and we're pleased. We couldn't be more pleased. And I do want to congratulate Mr. Otto yet again for successfully achieving additional grant funds for this project. And so instead of the number you saw 2 weeks ago, we're now able to say, well, we've got enough funds in terms of a source revenue allocation that can support the $27 million project, and we will continue to move forward with that because we don't have additional asks out right now. We've heard from everyone.
I would like the ask to be, we've got this additional money from the state and the feds, and
Point of
we would
order,
like
is
to
Mr. Nord been
reduce-
recognized to speak again?
Yeah.
Okay,
He's-
my
he's been-
apologies, Mr. Nord. My apologies.
Thank you. And then I would like the ask to be, hey, council or public, we've got this additional money that's come in from the state and the federal government. We don't have to take as much money out of the local taxpayer's pocket, but that question never comes before us. You know, so I think that's a fair request. Since we're getting this additional money, you're just arbitrarily saying, since we get this additional money, we're just going to increase the budget and do something that we hadn't originally talked about. You know, if we get more money from somewhere else, we can reduce the the amount from the local taxpayers, and that question is never coming forward.
I hear what you're saying. I don't want to sound like I'm debating. I think early on, when we first came to council with the 2019 build grant application, Mr. Nord, I believe that in multiple times since then, you have been concerned that we haven't accounted for cost increases. And this is basically exactly that. We are preparing for potential cost increases, and we have a very significant cushion now.
Now, I've asked about this cost increase because I've expected it, and every time that I've asked about it, you've said, "Well, we don't anticipate that. We haven't planned it." The mayor even said that the cost could go down, but the answer keeps changing. So, like I say, this is just very wrong that we tell the government one thing when at the same time we're telling our local taxpayers something else. Because remember, these numbers went out long ago. And just 2 weeks ago, we were back down to the $24 million number. Thank you.
I'm going to go to Ms. Cummings, then Ms. Smith, then Mr. McCarthy.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I want to say thank you to staff for the hard work you've done in order for us to continue to bring back dollars to our community. Because if they didn't come back here, they'd go somewhere else. And I appreciate your efforts to make sure that we bring those dollars back to this community. I also want to thank our federal elected officials who continue to support us every time we go out to get more money and to get these dollars. It is sad when people don't understand something that they then put out false information, and not only that attack all of us, because it's not just our staff who's a fraud, it's those of us who vote on certain things who would be considered a fraud too. And I've worked too hard to not do that or be that, and I don't believe this community is that. When it comes to grant monies, you do go out to get as much as you possibly can, because it's gone out of our community to go into state pots or into federal pots. And the ideal is to go and get that money and bring it back to this community. And that's what we work hard to do on a consistent basis. And at times it does, it does alleviate some things. We know there could be a possibility of an increase in what it will cost. We don't know. We haven't even bidded it out. But we want to prepare ourselves, because a great community, when you're doing this type of project, does its best to prepare itself. And it's better for us to have more and need less than be in a position where we can't even afford it. And then we have a halfway done project. So I'm glad that we're having this opportunity to be able to put ourselves in a great position. And one thing I do know about this town is if we had to, we would make adjustments accordingly. And I think that's the one thing that's been consistent, that we will stay within the amount of means we have. We will make sure that the project goes through according to what we have. But we've tried to create a budget to tell us the safest spot, the good sweet spot to be with the project. And that's probably the best way I can explain it to you. And what what we have attempted to do, and even as a council, as a whole body, because none of us are just single-handed. We try to work together. That's the ideal, for us to work together. So again, thank you to our staff. Thank you to our federal elected officials for continuing to support us, because this wouldn't happen without all the things that you do. Thank you.
Ms. Smith?
If I can ask for some clarification, that as part of the request that went to the grant, my suspicion is that accounting was asked to forecast how might the cost increase given our current inflation situation, and it was on the basis of modifying the forecast that the 6% cost that my colleague keeps alluding to was made part of that grant application. Did that happen?
Yes, it did. It did. We anticipated a modest inflationary factor as well as contingency in our original budget and our original grant request, and in our request this year then for additional 2019 build grant funds, we significantly increased an assumption for inflation, year-over-year inflation.
So the grant application was supported by a forecast that was responsive to the anticipated cost increases that most everyone is experiencing with the current inflationary pressures. And the Federal Rail Administration responded by providing this additional funding of over $3 million to assist us and be able to work towards our original vision for this underpass with those additional dollars in light of the anticipated inflation increase in cost. And now, in terms of giving the taxpayers a break, when the original forecast was less, taxpayers were footing 7% of the bill. They're now footing 6.2% of the bill. So in essence, we are getting more of a project with proportionately less local citizen direct input into that cost. And the original forecast and budget, I suspect, was also developed with engineers calculating what those costs would have been at that time for planning purposes, but we are still waiting on the final plans that will then go out to bid before we know what the project costs are. And the paperwork included in this packet includes a timetable of various benchmarks that are to be achieved, including the completion of the 90% plans. And it's my understanding that the public will receive information when all of the plans have been finalized, and that will be shared with the public. But at this time, we're still in the planning stage and refining what we can do within these budget constraints. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And I do want to point out, too, that this grant calls for some data to be provided following completion of the project over rail time savings, pedestrian savings, and I asked whether or not the data was being collected now to have a comparison and a baseline, and I was assured that that is happening, that the same data they're going to ask for after completion is going to be gathered before the project is complete, so that we have some indication of how this underpass has changed, and I expect for the better, rail travel and pedestrian movement. Thank you.
Mr. McCarthy?
Maybe. There we go. Thank you, Mayor. A little bit of an extension of some of what's been said, but a little different way. And Ms. Reese or staff, feel free to jump in if I'm going astray of how things work. But so part of what seems to be getting a little bit lost here is that grant funding comes before a project or in the early stages of a project. Particularly when we're talking about major infrastructure. So you wouldn't want to start spending millions and millions of dollars on a major infrastructure project before you actually secure the money to build. And so that's what's going on here. So far, I'm on point. Okay. So once you secure enough, what you presume to be the rough ballpark figures, then you spend the millions of dollars to do all the engineering work and to develop the construction plans and documents so that you can go acquire bids to put that out. And so in this case, we're in the early stages and acquiring dollars. I think we all understand that we're in an inflationary market and costs are going up. I don't think anybody's deluded by the reality of the market today. So it's responsible of staff to continue to go out to find dollars to help offset the expected inflationary costs of this project, if for no other reason than to help get it funded, and more importantly, to help avoid the increased potential of the need for local dollars, additional local dollars. And so, from my vantage point, anytime we can go bring our tax dollars back to our community to do major infrastructure projects is great. So now we're 90-some% of this project being paid for by external funding is fantastic. And if we think about it from a pure finance perspective, the cost of the project is going up, but our local funding isn't, then we're paying a increasingly smaller percent of this project here with local dollars. It's just straight up math. So I'm supportive of it. I think this is our obligation and our responsibility to secure funding in advance of a project before it gets started. And to not do that would be irresponsible, and we'd be shirking our responsibility as fiscal agents for our residents. Thanks.
Ms. Lorenz?
Thank you. Kind of taking notes here and would like to try to summarize a couple things. You know, I'm self-aware enough to know that over my time here on council, I have been critical of this project. So I can assure you that I am looking at these documents very closely, because I just want to be careful of what's going on here. So through that paradigm, even I'm comfortable what's going on here. And I think that my colleagues have done a really nice job trying to help our other colleague here, Mr. Nord, understand what's really happening here. And what's really happening here is not nefarious, as was kind of set up here by I think, your portrayal of it, Mr. Nord. That
Point of order. Please speak just about issues as you see them, but don't put words in my mouth.
okay, I'll reframe.
Continue, Ms.
Thank
Lorenz.
you. So where was I? So I think I just want to clarify and summarize that even through a critical lens of my own, I think our colleagues here have done a nice job. Ms. Harris, Mr. McCarthy, and Ms. Smith, in explaining really what's happening here, and that this is a normal cadence of things to happen on such a large project. And so I want to just put out there that this is not nefarious. This is a normal cadence of things that needs to happen. And, you know, I sit here and I think, well, what if we weren't doing this? Then we wouldn't be proactive and recognizing the inflationary realities. And we wouldn't be proactive in trying to minimize the amount that it would fall to local taxpayers. All of those things have been a concern raised by my colleague, Mr. Nord, and yet this is the very thing that we are addressing here. We are trying to keep those costs of the local taxpayers to a minimum, and we are trying to anticipate the potential increase of cost due to inflationary things that are outside of our control. So I'm left confused by an assertion put forward by my colleague here. But I appreciate what the others have said in the sense that what is happening here is really the right thing to do. Thank you.
Further on the item, Mr. Nord?
Thank you. I've not argued that I expected the cost to go up because of all the reasons people have said. I think everybody would have expected this to have gone up. I argued that the day that we voted this, I mean, when it was at $24 million, I said, have we even looked at what the costs are because of COVID? So from day one, I expected the cost to be higher. What I have been trying to say is that this is about open, honest, and transparent government. What I see when you step back from a higher view is, depending on the audience, when the question is asked, what's the budget? The answer changes. It's not consistent. That, to me, is a problem, because if the audience and what we want from that audience is more money to pad the project, then we give them a higher number. If it's our taxpayers and our council, like on August 1st, this is just from our last meeting, the budget that was in there was at $24 million. But yet, these other audiences we've been talking to, we've been giving them higher numbers because we want more money from them. That is where I'm at and why I see a problem. It's the honest and transparent part of government that I see is lacking. If us as citizens would play this game with the federal government and say, hey, we just want to get some more money for whatever benefit is we're trying to get, and we just pad the numbers, we'll end up in jail. But for us to do that, the comment is, you're just sensationalizing. You know, so that's where I'm at. This is a moral issue. This isn't anything about understanding why the costs would go up. I mean, everybody's costs have gone up. It's insane to think that this project wouldn't have gone up. It's about open, honest, and transparent government.
Mayor?
I'm just going to make one short comment here. Mr. Nord, I would certainly encourage you to spend some time with Mr. Hewen to discern the difference between a budget and projected costs. I would ask you to just do that. I have the floor, Mr. Nord. I would just ask you to do that. Ms. Lorenz, did you have your hand up?
I did.
Thank you.
Because in sports, sometimes there's fouls and sometimes there's a good time to make a foul. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say, I am offended by what Mr. Nord has said, and I don't care if it's a violation of your point of privilege. I am offended by the words you use to say that we are padding and that we are being immoral and that we're going to end up in jail. This is where we are very different, because we can both have concerns about a particular project and want to pay attention, but you immediately and always take it to a toxic and immoral storyline that just is baseless. And that's my foul for the night.
Ms. Smith?
I just want to repeat that on an application that we were notified that additional funds were available, calculations were made of the potential for increased cost on a project due to inflationary pressures. To submit on that application, given the review of that by the Federal Railroad Administration, they responded by granting us these additional dollars. All along, the commitment was we will build an underpass. In the application, I believe it talks about how there are certain features that might have had to be sacrificed without additional funding because of increased cost. This additional grant is allowing us to quite possibly stick to the vision that was originally developed for this underpass. But I have no doubt that if this is the last of the funding, this council will be responsible and look closely at how can we modify it to stick within the budget. I have no doubt that the council can do that. And if that means that there are some things that are unfinished, if that means that there are some things that are skipped, then so be it. But that is not before us now. What is before us is an awarding of an additional $3 million plus that will allow us to absorb some of the inflationary increases that are now anticipated. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McCarthy, did you have your hand up?
Sure, thank you. I'm figuring it out. My colleague said estimates keep going up. That is actually true. That's a true statement. Estimates do keep going up. And it's not uncommon in project estimates to change as you get closer to the build time, particularly in our current economy. It's pretty hard to estimate before you're in a position to go to bids. So yeah, that is a true statement. So yeah, we're going out and asking for more money. That is also a true statement. And those are both normal things. And this is a normal and a transparent and a responsible action to try to help offset cost increases. And that's what's happening tonight. I'm supportive. Thanks.
Thank you. Further on the item. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Please go ahead.
I just real quick comment. In the course of 2 weeks, August 1 to August 15th, staff has presented council with grant agreements with an additional $5 million toward the underpass project. I just want to take just a quick moment to celebrate that, extend my appreciation to staff and all of our funding partners, IDOT, ICC, FRA, and others that have worked very hard to get us to this point. The council report from August 1 did, in fact, as Mr. Nord showed, indicate, it clearly says current underpass project by source. That number on page 7.2 from the August 1 council meeting comes directly from the adopted budget. There's been nothing that hasn't been transparent. In this particular meeting, we're asking council to reflect that we're showing a number that reflects the additional dollars that are on the table tonight, which is the additional 1.57 million and the additional IDOT funds from 2 weeks ago. So just wanted to, again, kind of bring us back to the issue at hand, which is really potentially wrapping up the actual funding sources for the project. And it's, at least from my perspective, years and years of staff work to get us to this point, and I just want to extend my appreciation.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Harris,
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Ms. Lorenz.
Aye.
Mr. Nord.
No.
Ms. Smith.
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. The resolution is approved. Item 8 is a resolution approving the third amendment to the annexation agreement for Trails on Sunset Lake Subdivision, and that's at the northeast corner of Airport Road and Fort Jesse Road.
So moved.
Second.
Is there discussion on this item? Please call the roll.
Mr. McCarthy.
Aye.
Ms. Lorenz.
Aye.
Mr. Nord.
Aye.
Ms. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Harris.
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. The resolution is approved. Item 9 is a resolution approving the second amended preliminary subdivision plan for a portion of Trails on Sunset Lake subdivision.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Discussion on this item. Ms.
Ju-
Smith?
Just for the record, how many houses are we talking about included in this?
I believe it was 35 or 37. Did you hear that? 35 single family, 32 attached.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further? Please call the roll.
Mr. McCarthy.
Aye.
Ms. Lorenz.
Aye.
Mr. Nord.
Aye.
Ms. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Harris.
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. Item 10 and 11 has been withdrawn temporarily from, by request of the developer, so we have no public comment, no new business before taking a motion for adjournment, comments or concerns. And I will start with Ms. Harris. Ms. Harris, I was going to tell you that we should put a dollar jar up here. Every time I call you Ms. Cummings, I'm going to have to put $1 in it, and that can go to your favorite charity.
All right, thank you, Mayor. This is a great week. School is starting back. It's so good to see the energy back in our community, having our ISU students unload and starting to get settled back in. So welcome to all those who are new to ISU and to our community, and welcome back to returning students. And then I know our Unit 5 schools are starting this week. So wishing our students very well for a great new year, and I hope it goes well for you. And see you, Wednesday? Wednesday is when you'll start.
Ms. Smith?
I wanted to remind everybody about the students here, and please be careful. Some of them apparently are trying to replicate the game Frogger as they unload from their cars and cross into their dorm area. So be mindful of that. So drive carefully and watch for the signs. And also, I want to extend a congratulations to our council member who has a new addition to his family. And congratulations, and you're probably going to see him with bags under his eyes going forward. Thank you.
Mr. Nord?
Thank you. The Pazer road assessment was shared with the council. So I'd just like to ask Ms. Reese if she could explain to the public how they could find that, and if there's a map that they can get to see what that is, because I know there's a lot of interest out there.
Sure. I'm going to log in real quick to see if I can find it. So I guess the best thing to do would be looking at the town's website, www.normal.org. And then you can do a quick search, or you can ask Chatbot Hugh, the bottom corner. Just type in Pazer study, and it should come up and provide you options to take a look at that report.
Thank you. And then my
I think your microphone's off, Mr. Nord.
sorry. At my second item, at this past Planning Commission meeting, there was a comment made by one of the commissioners that the Planning Commission was not obligated to listen to the public comment in their decision, which they even asked our attorney if that was accurate, because they had to stay within guide rails, I think they said. Well, I'd like to push back on that, because that is exactly like the role of our government, is to listen to the people. Even
Point of order, I was at that planning commission. That comment was made by the attorney representing the developer. It was not made by the planning commission.
Well, I've got it right here, so I can just play it. But it was made by the Planning Commission. Here it is.
Yeah, guys, we're only really supposed to look at certain things, and honestly, public opinion is not necessarily one of those. We hear it, it's on the record, and it goes to council. And everything that you've said tonight will be part of this meeting minutes of the city council.
So
So
basically,
that was our commissioner, or that was one of the commissioners saying that they weren't obligated to listen. And I would push back on that. Our mission, that when we sat down for one of our work sessions, we said we would involve the community. So listening is involving the community. We need to make decisions with that input, because all we're going to do is just frustrate our residents that if they come to speak at some public forum, that their voice is not going to be heard. That is the frustration. That is the obstacle we've got to get past. We need to be more inclusive. And, I just wish that everybody would want to listen to the public, even if we're not required by law to do that. That should still be a goal, because that is what we said our mission was. Thank you.
I see, Mr. Day wants to respond to that as well. I also attended the entire planning commission meeting, and it was a very lengthy, over 3-hour public hearing, I believe, where a number of residents came forward and the planning commissioners did listen. I certainly don't want our planning commission volunteers to feel like we are misrepresenting what their role is and what they are doing every month at their meetings. They very diligently listened and asked questions of the developer after hearing from residents. So I think your snippet of video or audio, from the meeting was of the chairperson at the conclusion of a 3+ hour public hearing, who was explaining what the planning commission role is in terms of assessing whether or not the development complies with code, and how their recommendation is determined, because that's their role. They make a recommendation to you. Mr. Day?
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Nord, because I was a little worried I wasn't going to get to use my brand new fancy microphone, but we slipped it in under the wire. The snippet he played of the Planning Commission was absolutely correct. The chair, when he was talking at the beginning of the hearing, was informing the audience that state law requires the Plan Commission make their decisions based on certain legal criteria. The law is clear. Numerous courts have said that it's not, public opinion is not the controlling criteria in that case. And the Plan Commission, when they follow the legal criteria that they're supposed to evaluate or following the law, they took the same oath of office that each council member is taken to follow the law, follow the Constitution, and he was informing citizens that he was going to be doing exactly that, and the Plan Commission did that. To say that they didn't listen is incorrect. Certainly they took into account what the citizens had to say, but in making a final decision, they're forced to make their evaluation based on certain legal factors, and that's what they did.
Thank you. Motion for adjournment, please. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. McCarthy.
Okay, come on. Just one point of correction. If you listen closely to that audio, the chairman never said that they didn't have to listen. He was talking about public opinion. It never made the statement that they didn't have to listen. I too want to welcome students, both Illinois State University that sits on our doorstep and Illinois Wesleyan University, who sits a little farther down our doorstep. Lots of young folks running through our community and filling up our stores and unloading vehicles, and it's always fun to see. I share my caution, the caution that Ms. Smith does is please be mindful that they're running around in our streets, particularly around in Uptown and around campus, as the increased opportunity for pedestrian and vehicle meetings are higher now this time of year. So it's time for us to put those student goggles back on. But excited to have them back. Excited to see them and do any potential meet and greets in the future with them. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. One quick, comment to share, just a reminder, the next time we're together for a council meeting will be on a Tuesday because of the Labor Day holiday. So we will be meeting on Tuesday, September 6th as your next meeting. But there is a very important event that happens between now and September 6th, and that is the Sweet Corn Circus. So the cultural arts staff and Public Works and Parks and Rec and everyone has been working diligently to get ready for Sweet Corn Circus. We're excited. That's right around the corner. It is going to be Saturday and Sunday, August 27 and 28, and we hope to see you in Uptown for some great corn.
Great. I'd like to recognize a council member that we've lost, ex-council member Garrett Scott, who I had the privilege to serve with. Garrett was an amazing man and incredibly dedicated to this community. There's a good chance that the Constitution Trail wouldn't be as it is today if it wasn't for the early efforts of Garrett Scott. He was well loved as a teacher in this community. He was pretty much responsible for Chess becoming what it is in this community. He was a true, hardworking and faithful servant of the town for 23 years. And here's a record none of us, well, we've already lost on that record. In 23 years, Garrett never missed a council meeting, not one. So, Garrett, you're missed. Motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Miss Lorenz,
Aye.
Mr. Nord,
Aye.
Miss Smith,
Aye.
Miss Harris,
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Mayor Coos.
Aye, we are adjourned.